In the early 2nd century AD, the Roman Empire controlled most of the known world, and its armies were unmatched in discipline, organization, and battlefield success. Roman legions had crushed rebellions, defeated kings, and expanded the empire across 3 continents. But one Roman legion did not fall in a recorded battle, it did not retreat in defeat, and it did not surrender. It simply disappeared. More than 5,000 trained Roman soldiers vanished without a confirmed battlefield, without mass graves, and without a clear explanation in surviving Roman records. Their unit, known as Legio IX Hispana, was quietly removed from official history. In this documentary, we examine the rise of the Ninth Legion, the final records of its movements, the major theories surrounding its disappearance, and why this mystery remains unsolved nearly 2,000 years later. The vanished Roman legion. Britain was one of the most difficult regions the Roman Empire ever tried to control. The land was cold, heavily forested, and filled with tribes who were accustomed to fighting in rough terrain. Roman soldiers were trained for organized battles on open ground, but northern Britain offered almost none of that advantage. One of the most powerful Roman units sent to Britain was Legio IX Hispana, also known as the Ninth Legion. This legion had already fought in Spain, Gaul, and parts of Germany. It had a long record of successful campaigns and was considered one of Rome's experienced battle units. By the early 2nd century AD, Roman control over southern Britain was stable, but the northern regions were still resisting. Several tribes were attacking Roman forts and supply lines, and these attacks were sudden and difficult to counter because the attackers often disappeared back into forests and hills. To deal with this growing resistance, Roman authorities decided to send the Ninth Legion deeper into northern Britain, with the goal of crushing tribal resistance and securing the northern frontier permanently. Around 5,000 Roman soldiers moved north as part of this campaign, traveling with weapons, armor, horses, and supply wagons. At first, everything appeared normal. Roman camps were built each night according to standard procedure, and scouting parties were sent ahead. However, as the legion moved farther north, communication with Roman command posts became less frequent. Some scouting groups failed to return, and a few small supply teams also went missing. At the time, these losses were not considered unusual for a hostile region. The last known record of the Ninth Legion is a message confirming that they were advancing toward the northern tribal regions, and after this, all communication stopped completely. Days passed with no updates, then weeks passed, and still nothing. Roman commanders initially believed that delays were caused by distance or poor weather. Eventually, a Roman force was sent to investigate, but what they found created one of the greatest mysteries in military history. They discovered abandoned camps, broken equipment, and rusting weapons, but they did not find the remains of thousands of soldiers. There was no large battlefield, no mass grave, and no confirmed site of destruction. The Ninth Legion had effectively disappeared. After this event, something unusual happened inside the Roman Empire. Official records began to change. The name of the Ninth Legion slowly vanished from later documents, military lists showed replacement legions instead, and stone inscriptions that once listed the Ninth were altered or destroyed. This behavior suggests that Rome intentionally removed public references to the legion. The reason is still debated by historians, but one explanation is that such a massive unexplained loss could damage Rome's image of complete military control. Main theories about what happened begin with the Northern Britain destruction theory. This theory suggests that the Ninth Legion was destroyed in an ambush by northern tribes, possibly the Picts. These tribes used the terrain to their advantage and may have trapped the legion in a narrow valley or forest zone, where continuous attacks from higher ground could have overwhelmed the Roman formation. If this happened, the bodies may have been removed or scattered over time, leaving little physical evidence behind. The second explanation is the transfer and destruction elsewhere theory. Another theory suggests that the Ninth Legion was not destroyed in Britain at all. Instead, it may have been transferred to another conflict zone, possibly in Germany or the eastern provinces of the empire. According to this view, the legion may have been wiped out in a later war far from Britain, and the Britain story developed later due to missing records. The third explanation is the political cover-up theory. Some historians believe the Ninth Legion suffered a serious defeat that Rome chose to hide for political reasons. The empire controlled historical records, and removing the legion's name from documentation would help prevent panic and preserve the image of Roman dominance. After the disappearance of the Ninth Legion, Rome changed its strategy in Britain. Instead of pushing deeper into northern territories, Emperor Hadrian ordered the construction of Hadrian's Wall, marking a defensive shift rather than continued expansion. The wall became the new northern boundary of Roman control, and beyond it, Rome no longer attempted full conquest. To this day, no confirmed battlefield, mass grave, or official Roman report explains the final fate of the Ninth Legion. Archaeological discoveries occasionally find Roman weapons far north of Roman lines, but none provide clear proof of what happened to the entire legion. Because of this, Legio IX Hispana remains one of the greatest unsolved military mysteries in world history. The Germany theory is one of the strongest alternative explanations for the disappearance of the Ninth Legion. It suggests that the legion was not destroyed in Britain at all, but was quietly transferred out of Britain and later destroyed in another part of the empire. This theory exists because there is no direct archaeological proof that the Ninth Legion was wiped out in northern Britain. No confirmed mass graves, no large battlefield, and no official Roman disaster report have ever been found there. At the same time, Roman records from later periods show something unusual. After a certain point, the Ninth Legion simply stops appearing in Britain, but no Roman document clearly states that it was destroyed there. This has led to the idea that the legion may have been reassigned. Evidence supporting the transfer theory comes from Roman military inscriptions found in continental Europe, which suggests that parts of the Ninth Legion may have been active after their disappearance from Britain. A few inscriptions discovered near the Rhine region hint that soldiers connected to the Ninth were stationed there during later conflicts. Although these inscriptions are damaged and incomplete, they suggest that the legion may have been redeployed to deal with Germanic uprisings. At this time in Roman history, Germany was extremely unstable. Several tribes were attacking Roman forts, destroying supply routes, and forcing Roman armies into long and costly battles. If the Ninth was transferred there, it would explain why there is no physical evidence of its destruction in Britain. If this theory is correct, the Ninth Legion likely entered a very dangerous situation. Germanic warfare was different from British tribal warfare. Instead of hit-and-run raids, German tribes often used large surprise attacks, deep forest ambushes, and full encirclement tactics. Roman legions caught in narrow forest corridors had almost no room to maneuver. Heavy armor became a disadvantage, supply lines could be cut instantly, and once surrounded, retreat was almost impossible. If the Ninth Legion was trapped in such an operation, it could have been gradually erased through a sequence of attacks rather than a single massive battle, and this would explain why no single battlefield is known. Why Rome may have hidden a second disaster becomes clearer when we consider what such a loss would mean. If the Ninth Legion had already suffered heavy losses in Britain and was then destroyed in Germany, it would represent a double humiliation for Rome. Roman propaganda depended on the illusion of control, and admitting that an elite legion had failed in two separate regions would weaken confidence across the empire. Because of this, Rome may have chosen to fully erase the legion's identity instead of recording a second public defeat. This could explain why later Roman military records simply continue without mentioning the Ninth again. Despite its appeal, the Germany theory has serious weaknesses. First, no Roman historian clearly describes the Ninth Legion's destruction in Germany, even though Roman writers were usually detailed when recording major military disasters. Second, inscriptions that mention soldiers possibly linked to the Ninth are debated among experts, and some scholars believe they belong to other legions with similar numbering systems. Third, Rome usually did not move entire legions without leaving at least some administrative paperwork behind, and the complete absence of such documents raises doubts. Because of these gaps, the Germany theory remains possible but not proven. Even with the Germany theory, many historians still believe the Ninth Legion was destroyed in Britain. The sudden end of communication, combined with Rome's decision to halt northern expansion and build Hadrian's Wall, suggests that a serious military shock occurred in Britain itself. However, without physical evidence, the argument remains open. The Eastern War theory offers another major explanation for the disappearance of the Ninth Legion. This theory suggests that the legion was transferred far away from Britain and later destroyed during Rome's Eastern Wars, placing the unit in regions such as Armenia, Parthia, or the eastern frontier of the empire. During the early 2nd century AD, Rome was involved in multiple conflicts along its eastern borders, and these wars were against powerful and organized enemies rather than small tribal groups. The Parthian Empire in particular was one of Rome's most dangerous rivals. If the Ninth Legion was removed from Britain and sent east, it would explain why its destruction was never clearly connected to Britain. Why Rome needed more legions in the east is tied to the constant instability of the Eastern Front. Large Roman armies were required to defend borders, suppress revolts, and confront enemy cavalry forces that used tactics very different from those seen in Europe. Parthian armies relied heavily on fast-moving cavalry, horse archers, and long-range attacks, and Roman infantry formations, while highly effective in close combat, struggled against these methods in open desert and plains. It is believed that Rome may have quietly moved experienced legions such as the Ninth from stabilized regions like Britain to these far more dangerous eastern provinces. If the Ninth Legion reached the eastern battlefield, its destruction may have occurred during a large-scale Roman offensive or during the defense of a captured city. Roman forces fighting Parthians often faced three major dangers: long-distance missile attacks from horse archers, sudden large cavalry charges, and supply line collapse in desert regions. If the Ninth was part of such a campaign, it may have been surrounded far from reinforcements, and without water and supplies, even experienced Roman soldiers could be weakened within days. Once weakened, a full cavalry assault could destroy entire formations very quickly. Because Parthians did not fight in traditional Roman-style battles, there may never have been a single decisive battlefield that historians could identify later. Why no Eastern record survives remains one of the biggest problems with the Eastern theory, because there is a lack of direct historical documentation. Roman historians wrote extensively about Eastern wars, and major defeats were usually recorded even when they damaged Rome's reputation. However, no surviving Roman source clearly states that the Ninth Legion fought or was destroyed on the eastern frontier. Supporters of this theory argue that record loss over time could explain this absence, as wars, fires, political changes, and the collapse of the Western Roman Empire destroyed countless documents. Opponents argue that losing an entire legion should still appear somewhere clearly in surviving records. Political reasons for silence also play a role in supporting the Eastern theory. Another argument is political embarrassment. If the Ninth Legion was destroyed in a failed Eastern campaign that did not achieve its objectives, Rome may have hidden the full scale of the defeat to protect the emperor's reputation. This was not unheard of in Roman history, as defeats were sometimes blamed on individual generals rather than recorded as systemic military failures. Removing the legion from official lists would also prevent questions about its fate. Despite these possibilities, the Eastern theory has major weaknesses. No inscriptions place the Ninth Legion clearly in the East during its final years, no relief monuments mention its sacrifice, and no enemy records claim its destruction. This makes the Eastern explanation possible, but unsupported by hard proof. Why the mystery remains unsolved becomes clearer at this stage, because historians face three competing explanations: destruction in northern Britain, destruction after transfer to Germany, and destruction in the eastern frontier. Each theory has partial evidence and serious gaps. This is what makes the disappearance of the Ninth Legion different from other Roman military disasters, because there is no final confirmed answer. The internal betrayal and cover-up theory offers one of the most controversial explanations for the disappearance of the Ninth Legion. According to this view, the legion was not only defeated by external enemies, but was also affected by internal failure, poor leadership, or political betrayal. The Roman army was highly disciplined, but it was not immune to corruption, rivalry, or mistakes at the highest level of command. Governors, generals, and political leaders often competed for power, and in some cases, this competition directly affected military decisions. According to this theory, the Ninth Legion may have been sent on a mission that was poorly planned, rushed, or based on false intelligence. If the Ninth Legion was ordered to march into a hostile region without proper reconnaissance, supply preparation, or support, it could have entered a situation from which escape was impossible. This could include an underestimation of enemy numbers, a misunderstanding of terrain, incorrect reports about enemy movement, or false assurances of safety. In such a case, the legion would not have been betrayed by enemies alone, but by faulty Roman command decisions. When defeat occurred, responsibility would fall directly on Roman leadership rather than on battlefield chaos. Another angle of this theory involves political rivalry inside the empire. Some historians suggest that powerful Roman officials may have used the Ninth Legion as a political tool. Sending a rival's favored legion into extreme danger could weaken that rival's influence at court. If the legion was destroyed as a result, blame could be shifted, careers could be ended, and power could be redistributed inside Roman politics. While direct evidence is missing, this type of political behavior was common in Roman history. Why Rome would hide an internal failure is tied to how the empire maintained control, not only through military force but also through the image of order and superiority. Admitting that a legion was destroyed because of corruption, political games, or incompetent leadership would be more damaging than admitting defeat by an external enemy. It would suggest that Rome's greatest threat was not foreign tribes, but its own internal systems, and because of this, hiding the truth would serve a powerful purpose. Official records could be altered, blame could be erased, and the legion's name could simply disappear from history. There are several signs that support the idea of deliberate concealment. These include the rapid removal of the Ninth from later military records, the lack of a public Roman disaster report, the reassignment of forts that were once associated with the Ninth, and the sudden silence in inscriptions that previously mentioned the legion. Rome usually recorded defeats, even humiliating ones, so the complete absence of a clear explanation is unusual. Despite its logic, the betrayal theory also has weaknesses. There is no surviving direct document stating that the Ninth was betrayed or sacrificed for political reasons. Most evidence is circumstantial and based on patterns seen in other Roman events rather than on proof tied specifically to the Ninth Legion. Because of this, historians treat betrayal as a possible factor, not a confirmed cause. Many modern historians believe the truth may not fit into just one theory. It is possible that the Ninth suffered losses in Britain, was later withdrawn and weakened, was then transferred again, and finally destroyed in another conflict. Political decisions may have shaped each stage of this process, while later record erasure concealed the full story. This combined explanation would account for both the missing battlefield in Britain and the lack of clear destruction records elsewhere. After the disappearance of the Ninth Legion, Roman military behavior in Britain changed significantly. Instead of aggressive expansion, Rome shifted to defensive control. New forts were built closer together, supply routes were strengthened, and large-scale northern offensives stopped. This change in strategy suggests that Roman leadership experienced a major shock, regardless of where exactly the legion was lost. Despite centuries of research, archaeology has not produced a clear final answer about the fate of the Ninth Legion. However, several important discoveries help narrow down the possibilities. One of the most important sites connected to the Ninth Legion is York, which was the legion's main base in Britain for many years. Inscriptions from York clearly show that the Ninth Legion was active there during the early 2nd century AD. After a certain period, however, the name of the Ninth suddenly stops appearing in York's military records, and other legions are mentioned instead. This confirms that the Ninth left or ceased to exist shortly after that time. Some fragmentary inscriptions linked to soldiers of the Ninth have been found outside Britain, particularly in areas near the Rhine frontier. These inscriptions suggest that individuals who once served in the Ninth may have been reassigned or survived earlier campaigns. However, these inscriptions do not prove that the full legion remained active. Roman soldiers were often transferred individually after injuries, promotions, or reorganizations, which means these findings support the idea of partial survival but not the survival of the entire legion. Roman weapons such as swords, spearheads, and fragments of armor have been found far north of known Roman military lines. Some of these discoveries occur in regions where no official Roman forts ever existed. This suggests that Roman soldiers entered those areas at some point. However, single weapon finds do not confirm the destruction of a full legion. Weapons could have been lost during small skirmishes, trade, or raids. What is missing is the key evidence that normally confirms a destroyed Roman legion, including no large mass graves, no confirmed battlefield with thousands of remains, and no defeated legion monument built by Rome. The absence of this evidence is one of the central reasons the mystery continues. Even if the Ninth Legion was destroyed in Britain, there are clear reasons why physical evidence may not survive today. Bodies decompose quickly in wet soil, battlefields used for farming over centuries lose clear traces, weapons are often recycled or taken as trophies, and bones can be scattered by animals or destroyed by later construction. Additionally, if the tribes deliberately removed bodies and equipment to prevent Roman recovery, it would leave even less trace behind. Another major obstacle to solving the mystery is the destruction of Roman military records over time. Many Roman archives were lost due to fires, invasions, political changes, and the eventual collapse of the Western Roman Empire. What survives today represents only a small fraction of what once existed. It is possible that a clear written explanation of what happened to the Ninth Legion once existed but no longer survives. Because of this, historians must rely on indirect evidence instead of direct confirmation. Modern historians combine several methods to study the disappearance of the Ninth Legion, including analysis of Roman military deployment patterns, study of inscriptions and damaged stone carvings, archaeological surveys of suspected battle zones, comparison with known Roman defeats, and cross-checking Roman and non-Roman sources. Each method provides partial clues but no complete answer. Unlike many other Roman disasters, the Ninth Legion's disappearance lacks a single defining historical account. Many Roman legions were destroyed throughout history, but only a few became permanent historical mysteries. The Ninth became famous because its disappearance was sudden, its fate was never officially explained, its name was gradually erased from records, and its loss coincided with a major change in Roman strategy in Britain. These unusual features transformed the Ninth from a normal military unit into a long-lasting historical mystery. Over time, the story of the Ninth Legion moved beyond academic history and entered popular culture. Novels, films, documentaries, and television series have imagined different endings for the Legion. Most of these stories place the final battle in northern Britain and describe a dramatic last stand. While such depictions are fictional, they reflect how strongly the mystery has captured public imagination. However, historians clearly separate these stories from evidence-based research. Despite all debate, only a few facts are firmly established. The Ninth Legion was active in Britain during the early 2nd century AD. After a specific point it disappears completely from official records, no confirmed battlefield or destruction site has been identified, and Rome made a major defensive shift in Britain after its disappearance. Everything beyond these facts remains uncertain. After centuries of historical debate, the disappearance of the Ninth Legion remains unsolved because no single theory fully explains all the evidence. Each theory answers some questions but leaves others unanswered. The Britain destruction theory explains why Rome stopped expanding north and built Hadrian's Wall, but it cannot explain why no battlefield has ever been confirmed. The Germany transfer theory explains why inscriptions appear outside Britain, but it cannot prove that the entire legion was active there as a unit. The Eastern War theory explains how an experienced legion could vanish in a distant large-scale war, but it lacks direct archaeological or written confirmation. The betrayal and cover-up theory explains Rome's strange behavior in removing the legion from records, but it cannot prove that political motives alone caused its destruction. Because no theory fully explains every detail, historians remain divided. The reason this mystery has never been solved lies in several key factors. Large portions of Roman records were destroyed over time, archaeological evidence remains incomplete, Britain's climate destroys organic remains quickly, many suspected battle sites are now under farms, towns, and modern roads, and ancient historians often avoided recording politically embarrassing events. Without a final battlefield, a mass grave, or a clear Roman disaster report, the truth remains hidden. Modern archaeology continues to develop new methods, including satellite imaging, deep-ground radar, and digital reconstruction of ancient landscapes. Future discoveries could potentially reveal a hidden Roman battlefield in northern Britain, new inscriptions confirming a transfer of the Ninth Legion, mass graves connected to a large Roman force, or even documents lost for centuries. Any one of these discoveries could finally solve the mystery. Until then, historians can only work with probabilities rather than certainty. The disappearance of the Ninth Legion still matters today because it shows that even the strongest empires face limits. Rome controlled most of the known world, yet one of its elite legions vanished without explanation. This challenges the idea that history always preserves the truth of great powers. It also reminds us that not every war is recorded clearly, not every defeat is admitted, and not every mystery is meant to be solved quickly. Unlike many other legions that were destroyed and forgotten, the Ninth achieved an unusual form of immortality. It became a subject of academic debate, a symbol of unexplained military loss, a topic of books, documentaries, and films, and one of history's most famous missing armies. Its legacy no longer depends on victory or defeat, but on uncertainty. More than 1,900 years after the Ninth Legion disappeared, no confirmed answer has replaced speculation. The soldiers who marched under its banner remain unaccounted for. Their final battlefield is unknown. Their fate remains disputed. Whether they fell in Britain, were destroyed in Germany, vanished in the East, or were lost through political decisions, one fact remains unchanged. The Ninth Legion disappeared, and history never fully explained how. This is why Legio IX Hispana remains the greatest unsolved military mystery of the ancient world. The final fate of Legio IX Hispana continues to sit in silence between history and speculation. Until new evidence is found, the truth behind the Ninth Legion may remain forever hidden. If you found this documentary informative, consider subscribing to the channel for more in-depth history videos and unsolved mysteries from around the world. Thanks for watching.